Yeah, that was Joe. His name was Joe.
Yeah, right, yeah, there you go, yeah. And, yeah, so it's great, and this book actually talked about, the other book I was reading talked about drip irrigation, and that reminded me of you. And so, I thought I'd give you a call, and could you describe a little bit what Windhorse International is all about?
Yes, you have a pretty good idea from the book and everything about the IDE, what IDE did and its impact and so on, right?
Yeah.
So Windhorse is sort of like the son of IDE, or IDE returns, or whatever you want to call it. It basically builds on what I learned and the rest of us learned from IDE, and applies it more broadly and at scale. So Windhorse is designed to demonstrate that big business can get involved in creating new markets serving $2 a day customers, do it at scale, and make money doing it. So Windhorse is the first of several companies that I'm working on creating.
Wow.
What's that?
Oh, I said wow.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I had you on speaker. I apologize. I had you on speaker so I can write.
Oh, okay. I got you on speaker too because Catherine's with me and she's.
Oh, hi. Here you go.
Hi.
Okay, so each of these companies is designed to reach 100 million $2 a day customers and transform their lives and generate global sales of $10 billion.
10 million?
10 billion, B-I, with a B.
Oh, wow.
My contention is that in the next decade or two, big business will have to get involved in creating new markets serving $2 a day customers, or risk experiencing the same fate as General Motors.
And why is that?
Well, because as the recent global recession has clearly demonstrated, it's becoming more and more competitive to survive in the existing narrow range of the richest, serving the richest 10% of the world's customers. And in addition to that, the world is reaching its carrying capacity limits, which for many businesses provide a ceiling to continuous growth. So, in a sense, if you look at Detroit, they did extremely well following up on the breakthrough that Henry Ford created. But they went in the other direction, upmarket. Their biggest margins were with the luxury cars. And they did extremely well for many years, so why change? Except that all of a sudden, well, not so all of a sudden, Volkswagen and Honda and Toyota introduced cars that were smaller, cheaper, and more fuel efficient. And all of a sudden the market changed and General Motors was brought to its knees. I think that whole trend of going smaller and cheaper is something that is very clear in some of the transformative changes in business over the past 50 years. So that the Ford's motor car was a miniature version of the larger, heavier cars for rich playboys. And it was much cheaper, $370 compared with $3,000. Same with the Apple computer. It dramatically lowered the price and size of computers of the day, and which were mostly located in universities, and many of them filled half a room. So this whole trend of going up market, and Apple now lost out to IBM for the personal computer market to a large extent because of the mass production and affordability, even though Apples were cooler. And then Apple became probably the wealthiest corporation on the planet, with iPhones and iPads and that whole line of products which are aspirationally branded and definitely upmarket. And they're facing competition now from lower cost, and they just won a big lawsuit with Samsung. But in the end, I think that in each of these examples, so for instance, I think unless Apple is able to move down market, I believe that we'll be seeing in the future a $15 iPad.
Yeah.
And if Apple isn't able to go down market as well as retaining its huge advantage in the cool toys for rich people department, it's much more than cool toys, so I shouldn't just say cool toys, because the functions of the iPhone and the iPad are revolutionary. But so you got to go down market. Serving $2 a day customers is the ultimate direction of that down market. And in contrast to the market serving the richest 10%, the market serving $2 a day customers is a virgin market. It's untapped, it's higher risk, but there are huge opportunities. So I can say more, if you like, later about what Windhorse and these other companies are doing. But I believe, and you know, like 30 years ago when I said you could get to scale with radically affordable village technology, and that you could use market methods. I was very much what Malcolm Gladwell would call an outlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we sold 1 million treadle pumps, it changed the whole set of expectations. So in essence, this is a roundabout, wandering response to your question. I think that some of the essence of what we learned over 25 years at IDE is that while many approaches to improving the livelihoods of poor people have failed, releasing market forces in practical ways is likely to be successful. Design based on the ruthless pursuit of affordability is another factor. And reaching scale that was not anticipated before is another factor. So now I've taken those principles, and now I'm an outlier again, because I want to create a whole new generation of multinational corporations. Not that I believe a multinational is inherently good or inherently evil. It is simply an organizational structure. But if market forces are what is one of the factors that can really have positive impact, then who is better equipped to understand market forces than multinationals? And who is better equipped to reach scale than multinationals? Scale is, in my opinion, the biggest challenge facing development. We've done very badly on reaching scale. So those are the basic themes that have been the basis of what I'm trying to do in demonstrating new models for global businesses. And there's just one other piece, and then I've sort of covered the broad waterfront. I don't think that using their existing approaches, multinationals can be successful in creating new markets serving poor customers. I think it requires nothing less than a revolution in how big business designs, prices, markets, and distributes its products. And it's a discontinuous step. It's not just cosmetic changes to existing models. So that, I apologize for going on at such length, but that gives you the whole basic background.
No, I wanted you to go on that way. Thank you very much for that. I was silent because I was trying to type.
Yes, great.
My fingers are on fire now. Yeah, can you expand a little bit on why you don't think existing multinationals have a successful approach to reaching global markets? I mean, in fact, they are reaching global markets. So what do you mean by that?
Okay, so that's something of an overstatement. There have been notable successes. The most striking, I think, is the mobile phone. But not just the mobile phone. Lots of multinationals are working in emerging markets. For example, Unilever has more than 40% of its customers are in emerging markets. Cummins as a company entered the market in China and India 25 years ago, and now that is a major growth point for their company. That said, many of the products of Unilever, let's say, are products that are aimed at the middle class in developing countries.
Yeah.
Same with diesel engines. But mobile phones have made a huge impact right at the bottom of the pyramid. $1 a day people, most of them can't afford a cell phone yet, but they can afford to rent one, basically, by paying somebody to use it or borrowing it. So I'm responding to the exceptions part of your question, but there are countless examples of multinationals trying to simply do cosmetic changes to their existing product line. And it really doesn't work. Companies have tried to introduce, let's take sanitary napkins.
Mm-hmm.
Companies that introduce sanitary napkins that are 30% cheaper than their conventional sanitary napkins, that doesn't cut it. You've got to go down to 1/10 or 1/5 of the cost. And quite often, the product itself has to have different features. And there are some things being written now that describe some of that. How you really need to make a big breakthrough in price. How a company, for example, that was a major manufacturer and marketer of the mouse simply introduced a 30% cheaper mouse in China. And not only was that not enough of a price differential for the average person who used a mouse, but there are several features that a mouse has. And one of those features is resisting interference. So in a lot of the big cities in China, there's tremendous wave interference. And so the mouse that they eventually, this is Logitech, the mouse that they eventually introduced successfully after failing on their first product line, had a much more robust mechanism for blocking interference, and was priced much, much cheaper. And that was very successful. So that's what I mean by cosmetic changes or small changes don't work. You have to, Windhorse, I'll use Windhorse as another example of what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Coke and Pepsi and most soda pop manufacturers sell bottled water, which is safe to drink. Most of it is safe to drink at any rate. Certainly Coke and Pepsi's version is. But that costs about the same as a bottle of Coke in a village in India. It costs 20 cents. Well, to somebody living on $2 a day, that's way out of line with the price that people can afford to pay. Other companies which are more in the social venture capital space have introduced technologies like reverse osmosis to purify drinking water in villages. But a reverse osmosis piece of equipment costs $5,000. And then setting up all the peripherals, including the water kiosk, by the time you're done, you've invested $15,000. But our research and other people's research indicates that the price that people are willing to pay in rural villages is more like well, we're selling drinking water. Windhorse's subsidiary, which is Spring Health, is selling drinking water for basically 4 cents for 10 liters.
Wow.
Which is a tiny fraction of bottled water. So how do you get there? Well, you have to change the whole thing about affordability in making safe drinking water. So we basically did a scan of the different ways, the technologies that are available for purifying drinking water, and the cheapest that we found so far is called electrochlorination. It basically is a technology that's been around for 100 years. It's used mostly in larger water distribution, treatment and distribution systems like army bases. And it takes a solution, a 5% solution of salt water, and puts electrodes in that solution, and the electricity breaks down salt, which is sodium chloride, to produce chlorine oxidants, which basically kill pathogens. More than 99% of all pathogens are killed by chlorine. But the cost of that, you can now use a machine about the size of a bread box that costs $250, and that machine, using less than 50 cents a day in the cost of salt and electricity, will purify 80,000 liters of water. At that point, at that breakthrough in affordability, you can actually sell water at 4 cents, 2 rupees or 4 cents for 10 liters and make money doing it if you do it at volume.
How many rupees is that?
It's 2 rupees for 10 liters. 20
Okay.
paisa a liter. A paisa is like 20 cents. And a rupee is, it's roughly, the exchange rate is 50 rupees to the dollar, so a rupee is about 2 cents.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And because labor is fairly cheap, the shopkeeper who we partner with in the village hires a couple of people with cycle trolleys. This is like a rickshaw. It's a platform pulled by a bicycle, and they then deliver the same jerry cans. They're 10-liter jerry cans to people's homes, but they charge 3 rupees, which is now 6 cents instead of 4 cents. So you can have your choice. You can have the water delivered to your home like the old milk wagons used to do, and now you pay 6 cents for 10 liters, which is enough for most families for their drinking water supply for a day. Or you can pay 4 cents and bring your jerry can to the small shop that we're partners with and fill it up there for 4 cents for a 10-liter jerry can.
That's amazing. So Paul, what kind of, this is amazing, and this reminds me a lot of some of the stories that you tell in your book, where you have, I remember the one where you had the plastic, I'm sure you do too, you had the plastic tubing, but the tubing itself was, I don't know, $100 when you only had $5 to spend.
Right.
That kind of thing, and there's the whole, so what's the thought process that goes through, when you've been doing this now for some time, and what is the thought process that goes through your head when you work first of all on the acknowledged conversion of water to becoming potable, and using the acknowledged equipment and all the successful equipment and all that, and then have to rethink the thing. Do you have a fixed sort of analysis that goes into that? Because you've run up against this before, obviously, time and time again.
Well, there's some basic procedures that I learned from from IDE, and I just follow the same ones that I described in the book. And by the way, we're about halfway through another book with the provisional title of The Business Solution to Poverty that goes into more detail about how the design, what I call design for the other 90%,
All right, sure.
applies to design for scale and design for markets and design for these large corporations. But the process builds on what's described in Out of Poverty. The first step is talking to customers. And that's the second and third step as well. So what we did with Spring Health, which is the Indian company, is we first surveyed the whole scene, and the most underserved population are the people in relatively small rural villages, because technologies like reverse osmosis and ultraviolet cost enough that you need to either tilt towards urban or or town populations where you can get a large number of customers in a relatively small space, or use government subsidies. And I believe that there are major problems with using government subsidies. So we then focused on finding a model that would work in a village of 200 to 600 households. Now, one of the things that's been happening in India and in other countries as well is a water kiosk movement. An organization, maybe it's a social enterprise, builds a water kiosk, and they put inside the modern water purification technology, and they sell water to people who come to the kiosk. But when we did our numbers, we figured that people would be willing to pay 20 paise a liter. In some urban areas they'll pay more, but basically in rural areas it's that 4 cents for 10 liters. And in a village of, say, 300 families, you certainly should be able to, with good advertising, reach 100 of them. And 100 of them, each of them will use 10 liters, and that's about 1,000 liters a day. Well, when you do the math, 1,000 liters is 100 times 4 cents. It's 110 liter jerry cans, and that's $4 a day. Well, you can't possibly come out profitably if you are making the capital investment to build a single product kiosk and then put in $5,000 or $10,000 worth of equipment. You'll never break even with a single product kiosk, a water kiosk. So we wandered around in villages for a while, and then the obvious, very obvious thing hit us. Every village in every developing country in the world has 2 or 3 mom and pop shops. Have you traveled in developing countries? Have you had a chance to do that?
I've been in Africa and India.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, been all over the world actually.
Oh, then you know this very well. Well, you've seen some of these shops in India. They're called Kirana shops.
Yeah.
In Africa, they're dokans. They're selling cookies and candies and cigarettes and soap and maybe a bar of soap and dishwashing soap and shampoo and some spices, stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, it really hit us, and it was so obvious. Every village has 2 or 3 of these shops. They've already paid, invested the capital cost to have a shop. They already have people minding the shop. So why not just go into a partnership with them? So that's what we did.
Oh.
Now, so this design process is a thing about tackling the problems as you see them and doing it in the context of the village with a lot of feedback from your customers. And in this case, we started interviewing also shopkeepers. And we had a technology now that could do 80,000 liters of water, but you could only sell 1,000 liters in one village. That's our target. Some villages are actually selling more, and some a little bit less. But if you if you created 80,000 liters of water in one place, very quickly the transport cost will kill you.
Yeah.
Because water is very heavy. And there's no way you can haul 80,000 liters of water. So what we did instead is, all over India, you've probably seen these too, there are artisans that make cement tanks out of rings. They make cement rings in a mold, stack them on top of each other and seal them. And have you seen those?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are artisans that make those all over India, so we then hired artisans to build a 3,000 liter cement tank next to each shop. And the shopkeeper fills it with water from his own well, which is usually contaminated with fecal pathogens. You can build a shallow well in Orissa for about $75. So a lot of people have them. So the shopkeeper fills it with water from his own well, and instead of transporting water, we put our electrochlorinator in a market town, and each electrochlorinator services 50 villages. Then we hire, for each cluster of 50 villages, we hire 4 local staff with motorcycles, and they carry the water purifier instead of carrying water. So the water purifier is one of the main ingredients in it is the chlorine, and a little 750 ml bottle of water purifier will purify all the water in a 3,000 liter tank. So we have a local employee with a branded uniform and a motorcycle, and he or she visits 6 or 7 villages every day. And we not only build a tank, but we install a little pump, usually an electric pump, and the piping to go from the pump to the tank, and the tank is secure and locked, and so we do that whole installation. And
you have a photo of one of those people on their, sorry, you have a photo of one of those people on their motorcycle?
oh sure, I've got photos, I got a video.
Oh, great. If you could send me, well, yeah, if you could send me either the link to the video or a photo, that would be terrific.
Look up TEDx Mile High Paul Polak.
Oh, okay.
If you Google that, that's on the net, and it includes a 2.5-minute video, and it includes some pictures of the shops, and includes a picture of a guy delivering water purifier to a tank.
And I'm happy to email you some too, if I can get your email address at the end of this.
Yeah,
Okay.
Catherine can send you pictures as well.
Great. Hey, the question, how long does this process, the water purification process itself, how long does that take?
The guy, our staff member, on our business associate on a motorcycle, adds the chlorine-based water purifier, and then waits for 45 minutes.
About an hour, 45 minutes to an hour?
No, it's 45 minutes.
Yeah.
This is all standardized, it's all been tested and so on. At the end of 45 minutes, he does a chlorine residual test. If there's chlorine left over after the chlorine has interacted with pathogens and maybe suspended particles in the water, that means the water is safe.
Okay.
So then the shopkeeper starts selling the water.
Great.
So the other thing that you should know, we've been doing this now in the beta test stage. We're in 25 villages for the last 7 months. Because we do this in stages, and you can tell the design is based on affordability, and then it's not just affordability of technology. That's where people get a little bit misled. Affordability, there's process affordability. So, you know, when you're considering, well, are you going to put a water purifying device at every water sales outlet? In the interest of affordability, you're much better off carrying a lighter agent and having the water be sourced right at the place where it's going to be used. You see what I mean? So that there's process affordability. There's scale that creates affordability, so that part of the thing is the design process here really. So I mentioned about, and you know this of course, about the success of mobile phones. Our director of operations for this company in Orissa is a guy named Kishan Nanavati. And he comes from being responsible for 25,000 mobile phone kiosks in the state of Karnataka. So he has direct experience with a parallel thing that has been successful commercially at scale. So now to reach scale, that's another piece. Are you okay with my giving you all this detail?
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Okay, so part of the thing is, how do you reach scale? Well, you have to break everything down into components and figure out how to apply a sort of an assembly line process like Henry Ford or Knudsen did. And it's fascinating to me reading about Knudsen and not only General Motors, but organizing the armaments industry in the Second World War. It really was an integration of radical decentralization and centralized assembly. So to some extent we're using the same principles. So we have to, we've divided our staff into recruit and partner is one team. So that team goes out and surveys villages, picks the ones that fit for us, consults with village elders to identify the best entrepreneur, and then enters into an agreement with him. That entrepreneur, by the way, has skin in the game. He makes an investment too. Then the second team is the build team. And they build, eventually it'll be in blocks of 50. But we've learned that to distribute all the pipes and all the wiring and all the various components, one vehicle can reach 5 villages every day. So we've organized this into distributing all the components, and then we hire 3 cement ring artisans for every group of 50 villages, and we hire electricians and plumbers and plasterers. That's all got to be organized, but it's organized like an assembly line so that you can eventually just implement. We're right now putting to bed a $2 million investment for the rollout from investors, and we plan to be in 10,000 villages within 3 years. So that's involved in sort of almost a cookie cutter approach to each of these functions. And then the final team is the market team. And we've developed those procedures that effectively market this safe drinking water to villagers. And we do sort of a blitz in a village of several marketing strategies all together in 1 week. So part of the design process, the process part of it is designing that marketing process, designing the process of recruiting and entering into partnership with entrepreneurs, organizing the build, and organizing the marketing. And the key constraint, so you asked a question about current businesses. the main issues that have prevented many big businesses from entering this market is that, first of all, they don't think they can make a profit in it. Second, they don't have any idea about how to design with the ruthless pursuit of affordability. You gotta lower the price in many instances by a factor of 5 and change the function to fit what the customer's needs and aspirations are. And finally, they don't understand how to do last mile distribution. I sometimes call it last 500 feet distribution. So part of the thing that's built into the water business is we have an employee who works with performance bonuses, who visits a village every 3 days on a motorcycle, and that's a platform for last mile distribution. So now we're now planning to introduce a whole series of transformative branded products that we'll distribute to these same partner Kirana shops.
That's amazing. Yeah, they don't have either the will or the infrastructure to accomplish that problem.
Well, the problem is that if you take Unilever, let's say, these small shops in rural areas, they can afford to distribute to the towns, and they do distribute to larger Kirana shops in towns. But these small shops are too scattered and too low a volume. By the time you pay for fuel and the vehicle and the man or the woman to do the distribution, it just doesn't pay. So these shopkeepers in India, in the villages, 70% of what's on their shelves, they have to take the bus or a motorcycle into town to pick it up from the wholesale market.
Yeah.
Okay, this time I really will shut up and let you just ask questions, and I'll try to answer short.
Well, obviously this has been a deluge of information.
Yeah.
But and thank you. It's been fascinating, actually. And some of the questions that I had, you've kind of answered along the way. Like, what should major corporations look for? And you just described all of that in detail. So, why do you think it's necessary to serve this lower, what do we say, 10% of the population?
Well, no, there are 2.6 billion people in the world who live on less than $2 a day. That's about 40% of all customers in the world. And that's a bypassed market, by and large, with some exceptions.
Yeah.
So that's a fair number, and if you talk about $10 a day, but that's already way into the middle class, you're talking about 4 billion people out of 6.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that I'm talking about, the $2 a day people, is about the bottom 40%. So why do I think they should be served? Well, I started with the idea of finding practical solutions to global poverty for a variety of reasons. And so I started with that in mind. But now it's become increasingly clear that there are these huge new market opportunities that are highly profitable at scale. So that I think that the reason that companies should enter these markets is because they're virgin markets, so unlike the mature markets in which there's incredible competition, there's very little competition in several of these arenas
Yeah.
in this market. So I think it's a huge opportunity. And much like, when Ray Kroc talked about mass producing hamburgers, you couldn't get the gourmet restaurants of the day interested in this at all.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a terrific analogy, Paul.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it had the same problems, didn't it? You didn't
absolutely.
scale and you didn't have yeah.
Now, I'm not a big fan of fast foods, but if you look at it from a business perspective, what's the comparative size of the gourmet market, gourmet restaurant market compared to fast food market?
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, while it's probably not great for a gourmet restaurant to enter into the fast food business, I think that General Motors has found that if you don't get into smaller, cheaper, more fuel efficient cars, you're out of business. And if you look at Toyota and Hyundai, which is now doing to Toyota what Toyota did to General Motors, they start at the bottom and then expand their market and go up market. So Toyota then is in a position with part of its brand to compete with Mercedes.
Yeah.
And so
I
that's...
have a question for you.
What's that?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
How did you get into that? What is your, I have not looked at Wikipedia, and it probably tells me there, but what did you do, where were you born?
I was born in České Budějovice, in the what is now the Czech Republic.
Oh, cool.
We escaped to Canada in 1939 when I was 5 and a half as refugees from the Nazi occupation.
Sure. Yep. Did you live in Toronto or where?
I lived in the village of Millgrove, which is 6 miles north of Hamilton. It's about 40 miles west of Toronto.
Yeah. And then when did you enter the United States?
I got my MD degree in Canada and came to the U.S. to get my residency in psychiatry in Denver.
Oh, okay, cool. And then, so you were a psychiatrist?
Still am, last time I checked.
I guess it's a profession you never really leave, right?
Yeah, I guess that's right.
And then, so what got you into this?
Well, there were several things. I got interested as a psychiatrist in major mental illness. And I quickly began to realize that people with manic depressive illness and schizophrenia, people admitted to mental hospitals, a big part of the reason they were admitted were things happening in their real life space. And long story short, poverty played a major role. So I got interested in poverty strategies, especially for the chronically mentally ill. So we developed strategies that provided a whole spectrum of sheltered, semi-sheltered, and competitive housing. The same with work. And it became very clear that providing access to a much better home was a much bigger motivator to the chronically mentally ill than any of the talking therapies I could think of. So So I started doing poverty work with the mentally ill, but then I realized that the mentally ill in Denver, even those who were homeless, were living on maybe $500 a month, $600 a month. And it became increasingly clear that there were people living on $30 a month. So I went to visit some of those people in Bangladesh through a connection that my wife made. She's a Mennonite minister. And I went I was introduced to some poor farmers in Bangladesh by by some Mennonite volunteers in Bangladesh. And that was not on purpose, but I never really came back, although I continued working as a psychiatrist part-time for a while. But that got me in touch with, and I started this thing about talking to customers when I was working with the chronically mentally ill. I treated them with the same kind of respect that a good business entrepreneur treats customers. And that's what led me to see them in the real life setting. So when I talked to the people who were poor farmers in Bangladesh, they right away said they were poor because they didn't have enough money, and that they earned their living mostly from farming, and that they could improve their living by water control. So we looked around for affordable irrigation. And that led to the treadle pump and selling what eventually was about 2.5 million treadle pumps.
Wow.
And that in turn led to drip irrigation and the other stuff.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, hey, I'd like to do, thank you so much for taking your time to go through all of this. What I'd like to do is kind of plot out what I'm writing about, and then potentially call you back and fill in some blanks.
Okay.
And